Hi everybody, happy Tuesday and welcome to another episode of this. So it's werewolf time today. Last week we talked about real stories about vampires, and this week we're going to talk about real stories of werewolves. Now, the thing that makes this fun is, unlike vampires, werewolves, especially in a modern sense, tends to fall under the cryptid umbrella, and I think cryptids are fun as hell to kind of nerd out on and read up on. And we'll talk about some of my favorite documentary filmmakers who focus on cryptids. Now, last week I talked about kind of reference books talking about vampires, and I wanted to tell you about a couple of reference books for werewolves too. And I don't know how academic you want to get with these. If I were an academic, I wouldn't trust these. These books would be great in a curiosity sense, particularly the first one. It's just called A Field Guide to Shapeshifters, Lycanthropes, and Man-Beasts, Werewolves by Dr. Bob Curran, author of Vampires, illustrated by Ian Daniels. Now, this is an interesting book. I mean, I have it for a reason. I've read it for a reason. It talks about histories and stuff, but there are parts of it that are, did you check your references, bro? I don't know. I will say, especially the beginning when they're talking the history of werewolves, where the language comes from about it, it's very, very interesting, and it's a very well put together book. And this one doesn't focus so much on movies, on werewolves in fiction. This one is more, it's an anthropological study, like human history and where werewolves fit into that. It's actually very interesting. And the second one I have is just called Werewolves. It's going to be backwards, I'm sorry. By Jon Izzard. This one is a little more, it covers a little more, it does have the little bit in the beginning, talks about the history, human history and werewolves. This one deals a lot more with the movies, with the books, with the stories, and it's got fantastic drawings and pictures, stills from movies. This one, just for the pictures, is worth it. I'll put all this down below in the description box so you can check these out. But I love these books. Totally recommend them. So, let's talk about werewolves and real stories. And I've only got a few. I had a good time researching this episode, though, because I went down a few rabbit holes. There are a couple that I already knew about, and especially a couple of these modern ones I didn't know about, and then went down a big rabbit hole on a really cool website that I'm going to tell you about. But, so last week we talked about when vampires seem to first have entered the playing stage in human history. So let's talk about where it was with werewolves. Now, indigenous North American tribes have, their own history with shapeshifters and skinwalkers and all of that. These creatures are not the same as our monster, the werewolf. And in the same vein, the ancient Greeks had stories about people who were cursed by, like in the Odyssey, Circe, like an enchantress or a witch. She curses a bunch of men and turns them into wolves, but they're not werewolves. They never lose their humanity. It's just a physical transformation. They're still dudes under the, wolfy visage. And there's, stories about people who were cursed by gods who were turned into wolves, but they're still people. They just look like wolves. We don't get werewolves where people, maybe they're cursed, maybe they have a deal with the devil, maybe they have a salve given to them by a witch, which that one's my favorite. But we don't even get the actual word for werewolf in its earliest form until like the 11th century, and it's used, considering that the word's basis is either Norse or German. It's both. It seems to have entered history through English clergymen in the 11th century. These are not your typical kind of gray hooded monks who walk around doing good for, the towns that they're taking care of. These were tough guys who, this was a very tumultuous time in a lot of England at the time because the Vikings were still there. They were fighting off the Vikings. They were trying to reclaim the land for the English. And so these English clergymen, they had to be kind of tough. And in the 11th century, maybe the early 10th century, it gets murky, we have the rise of a clergyman named Wolfstein, which means Wolfstone, if you want to get that pedantic about it. And this Wolfstein becomes like a title. He has descendants, actually, who adopt this name. So there's a Wolfstein II, a Wolfstein III, and it seems to just kind of have become a title. Maybe this first guy that was actually his name, but he also took on, he would sign documents as Lupus. And it seems because this was the time of Vikings, the Vikings were really big on nicknames like Blood Axe and Bluetooth. So maybe this English clergyman took this on to appear more tough, whatever attributes of the wolf that he wanted to take on, that he wanted to appear as both to his enemies and his allies. This is one of the earliest instances in history that we get. Now, we're going to go about 500 years in the future, zoom, to the one that I was most familiar with, and that is the story of Peter, I think it's Stoob. The thing that sets him apart from a lot of the other people you'll read about, especially the people in France, because France had a werewolf problem, you guys. Peter Stoob was from Rhineland, which, depending on where you are in history, Austria, Germany, other Eastern European places, what sets him aside from everybody else is he was a wealthy farmer. He was not a poor person. He was not a hermit. He was not an outsider. He was a wealthy farmer. And what ends up going down is his story takes place in approximately 1589. And Peter Stoob is, kind of minding his own business in Rhineland. And there's a problem with, there's, of course, the livestock problem. Livestock always first. But, if it's just livestock, you're going to assume it's an actual wolf. Because wolves were running rampant in Europe back in those times. But it likes to prey on young children and women, not so much men. And then it kind of stops bothering livestock altogether. So, in one of these attacks, the werewolf attacks a person, and the person is at left hand. Okay. The person is attacked by this very large werewolf, and in the scuffle, in the attack, they chop off one of the forepaws of this wolf, and the person gets away. And they go and they report it and be like, this is no ordinary wolf. I know what a wolf looks like, and they would back then. I know what a wolf looks like. This was no ordinary wolf. It attacked me, and I chopped its paw off. It's lame. Let's go get it. So they put together a hunting party. And the hunting party, they've got dogs, they've got horses. They run this creature down and they corner it. And once they get on top of it, they see it's not a beast, it's a man who is missing his left hand. And they arrest him, and they torture him, and they get a confession out of him after this torture. And, this torture, they weren't fucking around back then. This torture was horrible, and after hours and hours of torture, he confesses that he is a werewolf. He made a pact with the devil when he was 12 years old and had been given a magical belt. In some stories, the belt is made of wolf hide, and sometimes it's not. It's just a belt. But this magical belt gives him the ability to turn into a wolf. And he confesses to killing 14 children, 2 pregnant women, and he ate their flesh and ravished their bodies. Ravished means there was a sexual component to what he was doing. He killed his own son. He had a sexual relationship with his own daughter. And so, of course, this is awful. They sentenced him to death. in the most awful manner. They put him on the breaking wheel. The flesh was torn from his body with red hot pincers. His limbs were broken with the blunt side of an axe so that he wouldn't rise from the grave, because, you know, werewolf. And they beheaded him, and they put his head on a spike and put it to show off, you know, we got the werewolf. They also executed his daughter and his mistress, because they seem to have been in on it. Now, again, this was a big deal because this was a person of the town. This was a wealthy farmer. This was a person who had standing in this community. And this is different from a lot of these other ones we're going to talk about, because a lot of these other ones, I'm only going to talk about a couple, but a lot of these other ones, they were outsiders. There's one that happened in France that he was a hermit, and they found him in the woods, kind of bloody, after they'd stumbled upon the body of a young boy, and there were 2 wolves on the body feeding on it. And these men chased off the wolves, and they were trying to hunt them down because they killed a person, they need to die. You can't have lone wolves. There was a rabid wolf problem. And this was in France. And again, in the 1500s and in the 1700s, France had a wolf problem. They didn't just have a werewolf problem. They also had a wolf problem. Even in Paris, which even then, you know, it wasn't this small little burg. Paris was always kind of a big town. And there are stories that I've heard of people sitting outside in Paris and a wolf just coming and dragging them off. But there's a lot of, most of these are rural places. Like when we talk about the Beast of Jevodon, this is a rural place. And this one that I'm talking about now, I can't pronounce the name of the town. It starts with a P. I'm really sorry, but my French isn't so good. They stumble upon the body of this boy. He's being eaten by 2 wolves. They chase the wolves off, but then they start trying to track them down. And in the process of trying to track down these 2 wolves, they find this man who's crouching down. He's naked and he's covered in blood. And they arrest him and they take him in. And the guy admits, you know, I'm a werewolf. I killed the kid. I'm a cannibal. I eat people. Yeah. And they sentence him to death. But there were people who sort of campaigned for this man, and they were like, no, because this man was a hermit, he lived outside of society, and there was a reason for that. These people who were campaigning for him had known of him, and they knew why he was a hermit, and they were able to show that he was, as they put it then, in the article that I read, they termed it this way, he was feeble-minded. And they were able to give him a stay of execution, and they gave him their version of therapy, and he was put into an asylum. So it was just kind of assumed that these were actual wolves. Now, again, in the 1500s and the 1700s, France had a wolf problem. One of the most famous is the Beast of Jevodon. Now, this one is covered a lot in history lessons because it got the attention of the king. So Jevodon is a rural area in France, and they were having a problem with livestock and children and women being killed. And the occasional man on his own would be dragged off and killed. And the thing is Jevodon had, as one of the articles put it, an infestation of wolves. So there was a wolf problem. So what made them think that one of these was special, that one of these could possibly be something more, something supernatural, like a werewolf? Well, this one seemed to be insatiable. It would kill multiple people in one day. It would kill a person, and then it would be sighted stalking a herder, a person herding their cows or sheeps. And, you know, they would save the person, but it was just like, if it's already eaten, why is it still hunting? There was something different. There was something wrong about this. And as I mentioned before, there was a problem with rabid wolves, but this one struck the people as different. And it went on from 1764 to 1767. And eventually the people started being like, look, we need help. They had put together many hunting parties, and they would kill wolves, but it was never the one that seemed to be causing all of this extreme havoc, all of this extreme death. I read one rubric where it said between 1700 and 1900, there were 9,000 wolf attacks in France. I mean, holy shit. That's a lot. So the king gets word of this. And it's Louis the 15th, I think. I should have written that down. I'm sorry. We're way at the end of the Louis line here. It's Louis the 15th, I think. And he sends people to come and search for this wolf. And his gun bearer and a younger man shoot a creature, and they bring the body back and they stuff it. And it is an unusually large creature, an unusually large wolf, and they think that's it. That is the beast that is doing all of this. But the problem is the killing goes on. It just looks like they just killed a really big lone wolf. And what ends up happening is another hunting party goes on. The king's like, we got it. We got the wolf. That's it. We are no longer being involved in this. And the people are like, you don't understand. You didn't get it. They put together another hunting party and they shoot something that makes them believe they actually got it this time. Because this one's weird. It doesn't look like a wolf. It isn't colored like a wolf. It doesn't have a tail like a wolf. It has a strange orange mane that goes down in a stripe in its head and its back. And it's something that thrills modern day scientists, modern day biologists, because it sounds like it could be any number of real life animals that are out of place. That maybe somebody had a menagerie of exotic animals and it escaped and happened in Jevodon and was killing people. And other people think werewolf. And at the time, werewolf was absolutely thrown out. And the part of the lore of this beast and the killing of it is that the guy that finally got this beast shot it with a silver bullet. And there were accounts of these hunting parties cornering this beast and shooting it, and it would jump up and run away. Children got in on this, who they would put bayonets on the ends of sticks and they would stab it and they would hit home and stab this creature and it would get up and run away. So there was a whole lot of mystery around not only what is it, but why can't we kill it? And that's one of the fun things about it. Now, depending on who you talk to, you can be either very pragmatic, and it was possibly an immature male lion that escaped from a menagerie from a local rich person, and it escaped and was killing people. And then you get the more fantasy-minded people who are like, no, it was totally a werewolf. But it perplexed people all the time, because they were like that. Again, these people knew what wolves looked like. They might not have known what a lion would have looked like. But again, a lion can be shot and stabbed with a bayonet and die. So it's a weird one, right? The Beast of Jevodon. The next one we want to talk about is, of course, the Beast of Bray Road. We're in modern times now. Now, the Beast of Bray Road has been spotted since 1936. Modern sightings go up to the early 2000s. It seems it's become kind of a hot spot for cryptozoologists and people looking. And actually, there is a production company, a group called Small Town Monsters. And these people specialize in making documentaries about cryptids, Small Town Monsters. They have a very prominent web presence. They're on Instagram, they're on Facebook, they're on Twitter. And they made a documentary about the Beast of Bray Road. I think they call it the Bray Road Beast in what they do. And it's a really good one. Their documentary on the Mothman is the best one out there. Out of all the documentaries made about Mothman, the one done by Small Town Monsters is the best. The one on the Bray Road Beast, it's okay. You know, we're dealing with something real funky here. Not that the Mothman isn't, but this one, you know. So Bray Road is in Michigan and Wisconsin, and where they see the most sightings is near the town of Elkhorn, Wisconsin. And what it is it's just been sightings and close calls. People driving this road at night and seeing something pass by their headlights, or they'll see something crouched by the side of the road. There's a story out there of a person whose car broke down and they were outside of the car, maybe changing a tire or looking under the hood, and they saw it. This, you know, the Beast of Bray Road sort of its mythology. It's not one of those terribly big dog men. Sometimes they can be like 9 feet tall. The Beast of Bray Road seems to be a little over 6 feet tall at most. It's not huge, but it's a dog man, which is what they're called. And this is one of those things, if you want to look it up, Google it. Beautiful artwork on this thing, and also, photoshopped pictures, obviously photoshopped. It's my husband. And just a lot of the great thing about this is that there is modern tellings of sightings, of experiences, and some of them are kind of bald, kind of uninteresting, but some of them are very compelling if you want to read up on sightings of the Beast of Bray Road. Okay, we're going to jump ahead to 2018. And, when I was looking for modern tellings of werewolf sightings, some of them were absolute garbage. And this is an example of ones that are garbage. This was from the New York Post. And if you don't know, the New York Post is kind of it's a trashy rag here in the United States. It's a tabloid, essentially. But they had a headline saying, "Rancher shoots strange wolf-like creature in Montana." And this happened in 2018. And they showed a picture of it, and it's a dog. He shot a great big dog. It might be a wolf. Its coloring's a little strange for a wolf, but it's a dog. But people saw the tweets on this story and the tweets of this picture and started going, "Oh, it's a werewolf, it's a werewolf." It's a dog. It's a dog. But looking for these more modern stories led me to the North American Dogman Project. I'm going to put this below. They have a website, like Small Town Monsters. They have a fantastic web presence. Their website is amazing. They've got pictures. They've got, all kinds of stuff. Anything you would want for someone of a cryptid-leaning mind wanting to look for werewolves or dogmen. North American Dogman Project. And I came upon this story of, it seems like Ohio might have a werewolf problem. There's the story of the werewolf in Defiance, Ohio. And this one goes back to the mid-1900s, where railroad workers would see werewolves. Now, the first... if you've ever seen the movie Silver Bullet, the first sighting of this werewolf in Defiance, Ohio, will remind you of the movie Silver Bullet. A man is working on the railroad lines late at night, and he turns around, and there's a werewolf there, and it beats him with a club. But he swears it was not a man, it was an animal that beat him with a club. Now, if that was the only sighting, it would be, whoa, that guy was hitting the sauce and just he got mugged and had a bad experience. Except that wasn't the only sighting of this dog-like creature walking upright, sometimes holding a club. There were a lot of people, a lot of railway workers who saw it, and people driving by in their cars would see it. So that was kind of crazy. The one that the North American Dogman Project seems to really be kind of obsessed with is the Germantown Werewolf, Germantown, Ohio. And the latest sighting of this one was in 2016. And if you go to their website, the North American Dogman Project, they have sketches that were done by people who've had experiences. And it reminds me a little bit of when... in the early 2000s, when the Mothman Project came out, and there were websites dedicated to sightings of the Mothman, and there were all these sketches of the Mothman looking in windows at people, and there are sketches like that of this werewolf, this extremely tall werewolf, looking in people's windows, crouching in cornfields, and it's very compelling. Like, I personally don't believe in werewolves. I personally don't, but it's fun, and it's fun because where I come from West Virginia, and I definitely grew up in rural places. I grew up on rural roads where you didn't see your neighbors' houses. You were surrounded by woods. And I've definitely seen and heard things in my life that I can't explain. So it's all, I don't think these people are kooky. I don't judge them harshly. I personally don't believe, but I don't have a bad opinion of the people who have seen things and then tell their story. I think the stories are very compelling. And if you do too, read up on it. So I'm going to put links and places for you to visit down below so you do your own research, because this one is, woo! We have a lot more instances of modern dogmen because of the cryptid angle, as opposed to one of the commenters was talking about he used to DM the I don't know, is it DM or mentor? I'm sorry, I forgot the word of the masquerade game with the modern day vampires. They're just kind of nerdy people obsessed with lore, which again, no hate. If I had the right group of people, I would totally play that game. I wouldn't take it super seriously, but I would play the game. It's just in this one has a sincere lack of humanity to the story, which lends to the cryptid angle, and then we get the cryptozoologists involved and the people who, you know, they get their field cameras and their trail cameras and they go hiking and they go camping looking for these things and they get really cool pictures. There is a picture on the North American Dogman Project. It's so obviously a deer head that they just kind of shadowed out. So believe it with a grain of salt, but also take it in a spirit of fun, because why not? What's it gonna hurt, really? So that'll be it for me this week. Thank you, as always, for watching, and thank you for recommending. If you have any recommendations or requests, let me know. And I have no idea what I'm going to do next week, but I will be back with some sort of nonsense. And I hope the universe is treating you well, better than this damn remote treats me. And I will be back next week. Bye!